when you're in your conditioned patterns and you're playing out your own life, your role, you may not be aware of the events that the conditioning got stuck in.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. Welcome, Dawna. We appreciate you coming on and joining us for the show today. Obviously, before we get going, we would love to learn a little bit more about you. So why don't you give our listeners a little introduction into who Dawna is?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to do that. So I was born. No, I'm kidding. Totally joking there. There was a time in my life, I was a financial advisor and a managing principal of an investment firm. And I was in that career for 10 years. So I call it a careerpreneur because every time I change jobs, I'm there for at least 10 years. And during that time, I was responsible for $500 million of other people's money. Wow. And what was happening was that amount of stress, worry, pressure, all of it actually broke down my health. And I was going to the doctors, and after 2 years, doctors weren't able to figure out anything that was wrong with me. And so I turned to natural healing and found a naturopathic doctor. She also practiced a form of Oriental medicine, as best as I could tell, because it was all new to me. And I found out that I couldn't digest food for those 2 years. And I only needed like a $35 bottle of enzymes to digest food. And she said to me, because you can't digest food, there's something in your outside life that you can't digest either. But don't go looking for it. It's just going to surface. So as I was recovering and was repairing my body, about 3 months later, I learned what that was. And that was the unfaithfulness of my husband at that time. And that went totally against my own value system. So I personally chose to leave the relationship with my children. And I thought about it for about a year and realized that those two events had one thing in common, and that was me. So I needed to discover some things about myself. So I moved to an ashram in the US. It's a spiritual living community. And I started studying science and meditation and brainwave patterns and physics and why me and what's this whole energy thing after seeing the naturopathic doctor. And when I left with my 2 children, I went to re-enter the workforce as a financial advisor. And at the time, I was not hireable, even though I held 7 securities licenses. And so I was left financially devastated following all of the money rules that I taught. So that was when something needed to change. And I made a commitment to myself, to others, that if I and my children were kept safe, because at the time there was a different relationship I was in. He became physically abusive. So I left and I made this promise that if I was kept safe and my children, that I would dedicate my life to this healing path. Here I am 12 years later, some adjustments at the 10-year mark, and I haven't stopped since.
That is amazing and a powerful story. And I'm sure powerful lessons came from this. What a wild way to, find yourself through all of these trials. And this is quite literally like this, the purpose of our podcast, right? It's like the Struggle to Strength podcast. Did you know going through all of those adversities that you faced that you were learning something and you were getting to a better place?
No, I didn't have a clue. I had no idea. And all of those things happened within 4 to 5 years. Oh, so wow. It was a very short, condensed time, although it felt like forever. And I didn't know that it was preparing me for what I was going to do in the healing world, because I find that there's 3 areas most people want to have change in internationally. That's health, wealth, and relationships. So when I sat with it, those core values for me are happiness, prosperity, and love. And it's really about loving the life you live and living the life that you love. And when I started making all of these connections, it was years later, I went into the healing world because I realized that was where my natural abilities were. And that's where it always unfolded. And I had ignored them throughout my childhood, throughout my teenage years, thought I had to live a worldly life. I became what my mother thought I should become. And I was passionate about helping other people create money because I didn't necessarily have those opportunities. I grew up near the poverty line in Silicon Valley. And by poverty, I mean welfare, food stamps, and the next door neighbor's dumpster dive for the day old food to bring over to my house so we would have food to eat. That's what I mean by poverty. So I didn't know any of those things, but what I learned was how the subconscious brain works, how you grow up, the environment, and the patterns that it creates. And that time of my life was just conditioned patterns that I needed to break the cycles of. And that's what it taught me for myself. And then it's taught me how to do that for other people.
Mm-hmm. It's super hard to be able to identify those patterns. We've learned them our entire lives in our childhood, those really formative years. Yes. They're really solidified. And I'm going through similar things now where, I'm trying to shift some of those patterns and perspectives. And it's really hard. It's you're trying to rewire your brain. You talk a lot about heart-centered healing, and you've mentioned here creating money, not making money, but creating money. And you like, it sounds, I'm getting like manifestation vibes. Yeah. So I would love to hear like what do you mean by creating money and how do you do that?
Okay.
We're not printing it, I'm sure.
No, we're not. That would be illegal, and we're not authorized to print money. So we're not making money. We're going to create it. So here's how it works. Every time we want to move forward in life, we either do or we don't. There's no try. So when we want to level up, when we want to have more, when we want to create or have more money to do the things that we want to do, either it happens or it doesn't. And it's all based on what is in your subconscious. Now, when you're in your conditioned patterns and you're playing out your own life, your role, you may not be aware of the events that the conditioning got stuck in, which is why somebody like me will come in. That's why the media calls me a mind whisperer, because I start with your initial thoughts. We find the thought under the thought under the thought, back to the originating thought, the emotional components, and then we shift and change that in that deeper subconscious. And I can help you find what all of those pieces are because I'm outside looking in. So your subconscious records everything from the moment you're born to the day you exit this earth as a literal event. But it's assigning emotions and feelings to those events continuously. Now, the problem is that our awareness level is only maybe 10% consciously aware. And that's if you're Albert Einstein. Scientists measured his brain and he was 10% aware. And I'm like, well, I'm not Einstein, so maybe mine's a little lower, but I like good round numbers. So what's the other 90% doing? Well, it's playing an automatic mind loop tape, your conditioned patterns, and it just happens automatically. So what we do is we start where you are today, find out what it is that you want to change, understand what the feeling is, where it got stuck in the body, and then it will take us back to one of those originating events in your childhood. And then we can understand what happened, and then we can look at the vibration and frequency that we needed. So if we got stuck on frustration, moving forward, very common in people wanting to create more money. Well, there was probably a moment in your childhood where there was extreme frustration around a situation that money was a part of. It may not have been the whole situation, but money was interjected in there. So every moment, every frequency exists. And that's what Nikola Tesla means. Then he says, if you want to know the secrets in the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. So when we find what that is, we can reprogram the subconscious to a different frequency, not frustration. We want to maybe have happiness or prosperity. And when that happens energetically, you will start sending out different energy signals to the world through the law of magnetism, and it's going to bring you back what you're asking for. So if you're sending out the signal of frustration, it's not going to go very far. You're going to get frustration back. But if you're sending out the signal of I'm happy and I'm prosperous, that in that 90% is going to bring it back, and it's going to magnetically attract the money back into your life. And that's what I mean by the subconscious creation of money, because we're changing the pieces in the subconscious to allow and accept the creation of money, the allowance of money, wealth, prosperity, abundance to come into your life. But it doesn't just affect you financially. It's all areas of your life. It includes your health. It includes your relationship, because to the universe, it's all or nothing. It doesn't separate or compartmentalize that it's in this category and not that category. It's just, oh, frustration here, have frustration. Oh, you have plenty here, have more plenty. So it's literally that literal. There we go.
Mm-hmm. I think like a lot of people, their first reaction to this, because this type of thing is like hard to comprehend for a lot of people, I think. So like the first reaction is like, oh yeah, whatever, easy for you to say, you know, like I'm struggling right now. I don't have time to just like think about like, how is me like thinking about stuff going to change anything? And I've been kind of like reading more on this topic, and I've seen some pretty wild shit that's like scientific studies that I wanted to kind of like talk about. But how do you like respond to somebody like that?
Well, the best way is, one, I've already been there. I've studied and I've learned, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and I have a lot of client testimonials. But just to show and demonstrate how this technique works, because it's the laws of physics. So with physics, you can take a cell of a liver, for example, and put it over here in state A. And then you can take a cell from the same liver and put it over here in state B. So one cell might be in California, one cell might be in New York. And when you shift and change or traumatize a cell, the cell that's in New York, the cell that's in California will respond as if it also received and had the same trauma, because they're connected, because there's a DNA connection, there's a essence connection, and because they came from the same source, the liver, one entity can affect the other. So it's how the process works, because we're changing the energy behind the thoughts that we have to create the outcomes we want to have.
I feel like some of the parts work is kind of what this is, and you know, and I do a lot of parts work in therapy, and
what's
you know,
that?
like
What's parts work?
I have no idea either.
Oh, really? It's kind of like what Travis just did. Like, you had a feeling, and Travis, you instantly knew that like hopelessness, like you felt in your chest.
Yeah.
So like most times you feel hopelessness, it's like probably in your chest. And so if you have that feeling in your chest, you know that that's hopelessness. But what you've done, Dawna, is you've kind of like planted a seed that is going to grow. And over time, that feeling of hopelessness is going to change and we'll feel more support over time. And so we have all these different feelings that we feel in different parts of our bodies. And so earlier on in this conversation, Dawna, you mentioned like, you mentioned something about where does that exist in your body, or like what part of your body do you feel that in? So I guess I'm curious, do you notice that people feel similar sensations, similar feelings, similar frustrations in similar parts of their bodies? Like is hopelessness usually a chest feeling from your experience?
Yes, there is a commonality between the feelings where they're located at, and there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. One is by the body system. So is that in the endocrine system? Is it in the nervous system? Is it in the digestive system? Is it, is it in the brain? Is it in the heart, the cardiovascular system? So the other way to look at it is by the areas of the body. So if it's something lower in the body, it will probably relate to the excretory system. When it's chest, it's mostly issues around love, sadness, grief, loneliness, hopelessness. Those are all facets of different types of sadness. When we have digestive issues and all physical components of that, it relates a lot to resentment, anger, rage. Inflammation is a huge cause of it. And that all goes down to anger. There's fear is another great category. Sometimes with fear, though, we'll feel it in different parts of the body. It'll come in the middle part most of the time. That's where people feel things. Sometimes stuff will get stuck in their throat or their head. And if it's in their head, I know they're working from their head space, not their heart space. And fear has a lot of stress, worry, pressure, anxiety. It will lead to things such as adrenal fatigue and restless leg syndrome and those types of things that'll keep you in that fight or flight category. So all of these pieces are interconnected. One of the ways that I really like to look at where the physical components are is based on the chakra system, because it will tell me what emotions that are stuck there and what emotions that they need. And there is that pattern as well. And I talk a little bit about that in the book, Financially Fit, Living the Secrets to an Abundant, Prosperous Life, based on financial words of what's stuck in what parts of the chakra and what are the good values, the virtues that also need to be there, because you have both.
Yeah, of course. So I guess to dive into that a little bit more, because I am really curious about your book. And obviously, like this conversation sort of began because of the feeling that Travis was having about, being financially fit, having the finances that we all desire. Like we all want to continue to grow our business. So,
right.
So how do we become financially fit? Like, what does that mean? And I know your book has the 5 secrets to being financially fit. So I would love to know what those are.
So with Financially Fit, it's really about aligning what's in the heart space with the mindset. Because when that comes in together, you have 100% of your capacity to utilize to attract into you the good things into life. So our conscious thinking is our 10% reality, but the feeling based is in the heart space, and that's that 90%. We're just not aware that 90%, what it's doing, what we're feeling in every moment, because we're just simply not aware. And so when we think our thought, we're using the law of attraction. I want to be rich in abundance. But what happens is in our heart space, we might feel less than or not enough. Most often that is the case. So you can think, I am rich and abundant all day long. It's going to take you 300 to 400 times of saying that, thinking that for 30 to 40 days to actually really start feeling it if you're doing it from a conscious point of view. If we're thinking we're rich and abundant, but we feel the lack energy, the universe is always going to return to you the lack energy, because it's returning based on how you feel. What's stronger, the 90% or the 10%? Well, the 90% is stronger. So when we change that to a higher frequency, then that is going to go out and attract back to you what we just changed it to. So it's all about how that is going out. So that 90% based on how you feel is what comes back and attracts from the universe as well. So it's really just mapping it out, seeing the pathway and understanding what the events are in the brain to the neuron pathways, so we know where to shift and change the different points to get the outcome that we want to have.
That makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting the way that we're thinking about, just in this example, like support. And now we're talking about structural support of the body. And, I imagine that there's from this perspective, some sort of correlation between instability from a structural perspective, as far as the body is concerned, and instability bleeding over into other areas of your life.
Right. Absolutely. Because the universe and the people around you, energy is always going to return what you're feeling, and you might not even be aware of it.
And I think a lot of times, when we're thinking about trying to either pay attention to create something or avoid something, no matter what, we're still thinking of that thing. So, I think of like, I guess an obvious or an easy to understand example would be like, if you were trying not to see something, even if it was something as simple as like a red car, it doesn't matter what it is. You're like, don't look at the red car. Don't look for any red cars. I don't want to see a red car.
That's all you see.
And all you're going to see is freaking red cars. Cause like, and so even though
I'm not going to see a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Try that. Actually, that might work. But this is, you're still thinking of it all the time. So it's still in your brain, it's still in your subconscious. And, I think this can also translate into feelings and, finances and wealth and happiness and relationships. Now, you originally spoke earlier on in this conversation about health, wealth, and relationships. How closely are these things intertwined? Like, a lot of times we talk about money and happiness. Like, does money actually make people happier?
No. Happiness comes from the inside. Money will provide a temporary happiness. But what's been happening in our society is that there's been such an emphasis on money that it's replacing who we are as a divine essence. And that's why some of the words, even in our financial world, overlap. So when we say, here is your net worth, and a client's going, I just want to know that I was worthy, the universe is using the same word, the same energy underneath it to provide. So if you don't feel worthy and deserving on the inside, your net worth may not be very high. So they're all interconnected and interrelated. So often when I talk to somebody, they'll say, I want to create more money. I want to have more. Why? They'll tell me about a relationship. Well, my two boys are in high school. They're going to go to college in a few years. There's a few things we want to do together as a family before they go live their own life. Actual true example. And okay, we get through that with the relationship. And then at the end, they're like, the pit in my stomach is gone. Or is that why I have this with my thyroid? And you're like, well, yes. But if the entry point was health and someone came and said, I have this health condition, there's an emotional component to it. When we shift and change the emotional component, the people in their family and that they're closest to are also going to feel it because there's a DNA and vibrational connection. They're going to feel differently. So the people are going to respond to them in their life differently. So they're going to have more love. And then their financial situation will shift and change as well. Because when clients were shifting and changing some of their things that they were learning on a deeper soul level, they always had greater financial return or more cash flow or a cash surplus coming in. And that's what I was watching over the last 2 years. So I had my 10-year career at the financial planning firm. I worked 10 years with a private practice internationally. And now I went through my little transition, and now it's like marrying those two together because I keep seeing all of these different correlations. Now, someone could come and ask me about their soulmate or a relationship. We shift and change that. Next thing they know, they have more money and their back stopped hurting because it's all interconnected, because the universe is returning all the time based on how you're feeling, and it affects every area of your life. But that happiness internally comes from the inside. And when that is there, it will attract a lot more financial money than anything else. And the entry point to that happiness, it leads to love because it opens up the heart space to receive and to operate and be in those other values. Letting go of the depression and the anxiety and the fear and the struggle and the sacrifice, because love and happiness is so much higher vibrating than what those are. And we're vibrational beings. We're electromagnetic beings.
What I'm kind of hearing in a way is like a lot of people will assume that like I need to get money to be happy. But in reality, it's almost like you should be happy to get money.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is interesting because that's so much harder. I feel like
it is. Yeah. But when you shift and change using these techniques, it happens a lot faster. And that's the first part of Financially Fit. It talks about that and really what's at your center.
I mean, it makes sense too, because I've definitely I work with, or, I don't know, I know all kinds of different people, and you really see a kind of a common theme with people who are doing well, quote, at least from what we can see, they're making money and they seem happy, and people who are not doing as well, struggling, whatever. And from a kind of like financial standpoint, you really see like an idea of like people really worried about like getting paid and like, what's like, how much is like the dollar amount that I'm getting paid for these hours, blah, blah, blah. And there's kind of like a different vibe, I guess, for people who are doing better. Like it's almost like they're like looking in a different area. It's not like, oh, I need to get $20 an hour for this thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like a bigger.
Right. But the opposite of that is also true too, because I do have clients that have multi-million-dollar estates, and they come to me going, I have all this money. I can have anything in the world that I ever want, but how do I know if I'm happy? So happiness isn't about money, and money.
What is happiness?
I have each person discover that for themselves. And one of the things I recommend and talk about is a thing I did for myself. I had an employer come to me years ago saying, are you happy? Are you happy? Every day, every time I saw this person, are you happy? So I started quantifying my happiness. Today I'm happy. Yesterday I wasn't. Well, I'm mostly happy today. Well, I'm like 87.5% happy. Wait, why aren't I 100% happy? What happens if I'm 100% happy? And then I started focusing on my unhappiness, going, why wasn't I happy about that event? And what I started doing was I started to keeping a journal of at the end of every day, kind of like a gratitude journal, but I would write down all the times that I was happy throughout the day. And that happiness started attracting more happiness into my life. And then I realized I was focusing on the wrong thing. I was focusing on all of the things that allowed me to be unhappy, the sacrifice, the struggle, the lack energy. Oh, this is hard work. Oh, I have stress. And it focused me on what that happiness truly is. So each person's going to have something different for their happiness. For me, it's living here in Montana, being outside, being in nature. I would live outside if I could, but I really enjoy indoor plumbing. So I stay inside for that. But I live in the trees and I have really big windows so I can look outside all the time because that's what's important to me. That brings me internal peace. It brings me balance and it brings me happiness. Put me outside in nature, totally for it. Now, other people, there might not be outdoor enthusiasts. They might be somewhere else or do something else. So you get to uncover what brings you happiness. But until you write it down yourself at the end of every day of all your happy moments, you're not going to know really what truly brings you happiness. And what you think might be happiness might not be when you keep a journal for a period of time.
I think this whole concept is really interesting because so often in my line of work, and obviously in your line of work, we see that people try to achieve goals. They try to achieve feelings. They try to achieve success by focusing on what obviously will get them there in their mind.
Yes.
They want to lose weight. They say, okay, I'll be happy when I lose weight. And in order to lose weight, I have to eat less and move more. They want to be rich. Okay, I'll be happy when I can afford this. In order to afford that, I have to work this much. I have to get paid this much. And that seems obvious because it seems logical and it makes sense.
Right. But that bar keeps moving.
Exactly. It keeps moving. And I tell my clients the same thing. Like if you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy 20 pounds from now. And if you want to lose, you don't have to lose weight to be happy. You have to be happy to lose weight. Like your body hears everything you say to it. And what you're saying is like the universe hears everything that your body says to it. So that whole concept of like the universe is 10% thought, 90% heart, then, the 10% of thoughts that you speak about your body hears. And if what your body is putting out, the universe hears, then like all of this stuff is interconnected. So if people wanted to get better at understanding how this process works, if they wanted to get better at shifting their mindset from, I have to do this to be happy to, I have to be happy to do this. What are like the basic things that everyone should be doing? I know you mentioned like keeping an accounting of what makes you happy during your day, but like what other basics can people be doing?
Right. So first you have to realize there's a paradigm shift because all of the things that you're seeing that's going to bring you happiness is outside of you, like money, for example. And we have to shift that from the outside in perspective to the inside out perspective. So the very first thing is have awareness of how you feel on the deeper inside. So once we have that awareness, we can identify the feeling and then we can do something about it if it's not a feeling we want to have. So when you go through this paradigm shift, you can ask yourself, when you make a decision, is this going to bring me happiness? Or are you making a decision based on what you perceive as somebody else's happiness? An example of this is my children wanted a dog. I did not want a dog. We got a dog because I thought my children would be happy with the dog. I had to take care of the dog and do everything with the dog, and I wasn't happy. So we no longer have that dog because it didn't bring me happiness. And it didn't really bring my children happiness in it either. They just wanted a dog. So are you making the decision based on what you want that's going to bring you happiness? Or are you making the decision based on what you perceive as somebody else's happiness? Each person gets to choose their own happiness. You can't make someone feel happiness unless they choose it for themselves. The second thing that I'm going to say and share with this is set a timer on your phone for like 3 hours and 33 minutes or something like that. And set it at an odd time. So it's not at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. And when the timer goes off, what you're going to do is you're going to assess how you feel. And if you're happy and joyful and everything's perfect, great, keep going. But if you feel stress or worry or pressure when that timer goes off and you feel it, stop yourself and ask yourself, what would you rather feel? What would be something different? And it might be that you feel peace or balance or want more clarity. And so what you're going to do is you're going to exchange the energy. This is one of those quick Band-Aid fixes that you can do until the subconscious reprograms. And when you breathe in, you're breathing in the oxygen, all the good things that the body needs. So we're going to breathe in the word peace. And when we breathe out, we're going to breathe out all the toxins and the carbon dioxide, the things the body doesn't need. So we're going to breathe out stress. So you breathe in peace, breathe out stress. And it works for any combination of words. Breathe in kindness, breathe out bitterness, breathe in happiness, breathe out fear, whatever it is for you. And then when you do that, do it for 3 to 5 minutes. It's going to shift and change your brainwave patterns a little bit. When you go back to your job or whatever the task was that you were doing, you're going to have more focus, clarity, and balance because your body would have gone under a physiological change and you're going to feel better. You're going to feel more uplifted. You're going to feel a little bit more vibrant. You're not going to feel as stressed or frustrated or whatever your lower word was. Your task is going to finish faster. You're going to be able to move through it. You're going to be in an elevated mood. And then the universe is going to start bringing you those higher things, those higher qualities of what you're asking for rather than the energy that you were in. So that's a real quick, simple tip that anybody can do at any time. The key is stopping throughout the day and checking on your awareness to how you feel.
I think the awareness component is the most important part. And so, creating awareness, and then we can identify what we need to do once we have that awareness. So I think that's a pretty, some really simple, basic things that everybody can do. It sounds really valuable. And then lastly, my last question is, where can we learn more about financial literacy? Obviously, we have your book, Financially Fit. But what are some of your favorite resources that you direct people to in order to improve our understanding of financial literacy?
Wow. I have some uncommon books that I really enjoy. So if you were to ask me, my favorite book is called Old Turtle and the Broken Truth, because it really talks about the emotional component and how our culture has changed, where all the fighting and arguing came back, but it's really back to wholeness, which really is love, and that everybody has love. It's a picture book for children, but has some great, great wisdom in there. Some other fun resources and books that I enjoy reading. I could tell you about my physics books because I'm like a total physics nerd, but a classic one that a lot of people talk about is Think and Grow Rich. But the parts in there that I really enjoy are the chapters are about charisma. And it talks about the law of magnetism to magnetically attract in. And if you don't have charisma or these qualities that add into a charisma, you might have some thinking to do to grow rich along the way. So those are just some fun books. My last round of books, I'm reading habit books, how to overcome your habits and what it says in there, because it gives me the science and that behind what it is that I do.
Oh, that's great. We love habits books, and I'm sure we have the obvious like Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yep.
What are some of the ones that you're reading now?
Good.
I just joined a book club where we just started Atomic Habits.
Nice.
So,
that's one of the best books ever written, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, next week we have to be through chapter 2.
Nice.
So I have some reading to do over the weekend.
Oh man, that's exciting. Well, Dawna, thank you so much. This has been a very eye-opening conversation. I think something that a lot of people need to hear about just the power of our words, our thoughts, our feelings, and the energy that we put out into the universe. Like every human wants to have good energy. Like, when you meet someone and they have good energy, you can feel it. I think deep down, all of us want that to some extent. We feel comfortable around those people, and we want to be people that others feel comfortable around. So this has been a very eye-opening and valuable conversation for me. I really appreciate it. I do know that our listeners are likely going to want to learn more about you, where they can find you, more about your book. So before we let you go, I would love to have you just leave our listeners with some last words of wisdom, as well as kind of give yourself the plug of where we can find you and what you've got going on.
Okay. Where to find me? If you're here in the United States, you can do a mobile text opt-in. So you would just type in this number on your cell phone, like you're going to send a text message, 26786. And for the message, just write the word abundance. So text the word abundance to 26786, because what that'll do, it'll connect you to all the social media, my website and everything, how to book a consultation call if you choose. And outside of the United States, it's just dawnacampbell.net. And it's the exact same platform if you wanted to look it up that way. So words of wisdom. During all of those difficult times that I went through, I wrote out my own mantra. And it's one that I live by today. And it is trust and you will see, believe and you will know, have faith, all is well, follow your heart and spirit will lead you.
I love that. That's beautiful.
It's great.
That is beautiful. And a beautiful way to end this conversation of something that, we're all working on. We're all working on.
We're all works in progress.
Exactly. We are all working on ourselves. We have all endured our own struggles and we're all trying to learn from them. And just like our podcast entails, there is no strength without struggle. So endure those struggles, learn from those struggles, and all will be well. So thank you, Dawna. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your words of wisdom. Thank you all. Of course. And thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.